Jaliek Rainwalker was 12 years old when he went missing November 1st, 2007, while staying with his adoptive father, Stephen Kerr, in a relative's unoccupied home overnight. The following morning, Stephen Kerr told police that when he woke up, Jaliek was gone. Did Jaliek really run away, or did his father do something terrible that night? You're listening to Creep It Real, and today we cover the story of 12-year-old Jaliek Rainwalker. Hello, everybody. This is Ashley. You're listening to Creep It Real, and today I have a very special guest helping me, Holly from Murd Up.
Hi.
Hi, Holly.
What's up?
Oh, nothing. You're just saving my butt. So
happy to do it.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So today we are talking about one of the most depressing topics I've ever read about in my life, I think, but also infuriating. And I feel like, I don't know, man. I'm like already kind of questioning myself because I'm like, do I say just off the bat that I think this dude is a dick?
I mean, so I looked through everything pretty quickly just to, have a little information for when we sat down to record. And right. I mean, I think you have to say up top that he sucks. I mean, yeah. It's pretty like, quick into it that you're like, what is this story? Like, what are you talking about?
It just doesn't remotely, even in the slightest, sound genuine or anyway. Okay. So yeah, we're talking about 12-year-old Jaliek Rainwalker, who went missing while staying at a house with his father overnight. And as you heard in the opening, his father woke up and said that he slept through the night, and 12-year-old Jaliek just managed to escape without him waking up or having any money, and has never been seen or found since. His adoptive father, I mean, we're going to talk about him a lot, and if you're one of those people that's like, I don't like to hear your opinion, I think you should turn this one off. Yeah. I'm going to go ahead and run you off, because I don't think I can really do anything but be upfront about my opinions about this, because there's just too many hinky things that have gone on here.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. I think that that you have to have an opinion on this. If you don't, it's just like he hasn't. Well, we'll get into it, but you just have to. You have to. Sorry.
Yeah. I'm just gonna go ahead and say it. He's garbage. Okay. So this stepfather or adoptive father is garbage. Jaliek Rainwalker was born to a drug addicted mother. It was crack cocaine that she was addicted to, and so that obviously affected his development as a fetus. And then he went on to live in 6 different foster homes before he was adopted by Jocelyn McDonald and Stephen Kerr, the parents who adopted him right before he went missing. His former foster parents, Jody and Larry Schoen, who cared for him for 4 years, described Jaliek as a very intelligent but very troubled child. The Schoens had originally planned to adopt him, but after he attacked their daughter when he was 7, they decided that he could no longer stay in their home. So obviously, Jaliek ended up with some developmental issues that caused him to, I think I'm jumping ahead, but I'm just going to say it, he was diagnosed with Reactive Attachment Disorder, which is something that means that you don't really create attachments to the parental figures in your life, and you get more uncomfortable by other people's attention, and whenever you need to like calm down or something, that needs to be done by yourself. So you can see how that probably would cause some issues whenever you're trying, especially when you're trying to create bonds with potential adoptive parents in foster homes.
Yeah.
It's
very sad that, I mean, it must be so frustrating for him, because being intelligent but having so many issues that were beyond your control.
Exactly. And going pretty much ignored,
Yeah. And then this, you have someone who's interested in, taking you in for adoption, but they ultimately decide not to because you don't know how to express yourself.
Right. Yes.
Any other way.
Yes, exactly. It was horrible, to say the least. So Jocelyn McDonald and Stephen Kerr were somehow deemed a therapeutic foster home. And when they adopted Jaliek, they received about $1,700 a month for taking him in. I guess because they had designated themselves as a therapeutic home, which that's a decent amount of money to be getting. Yeah. To adopt a child, which, I mean, I know that, it's just such a hard thing because it's like, I would love to think that people don't do this kind of thing for the money, but I've already covered a case or two where people do it for the money, you know? So it's like, man, that's a lot. Anyway, but I guess.
I mean, it's definitely something that people do, and it's very sad that, like, you would use a kid in that sense. And, I mean, they have another, they have other kids, so it seems like, why would you be like that?
Yeah.
But I guess, for some reason.
I mean, I guess also it's potentially a way to help maybe kids that are harder to find homes for, to like if the people they go to receive some money, but it just seems like that could get, what's the dang simple term I'm looking for? Not shady, but corrupt. That could become a corrupt system. There we go. Very easily, because obviously people can want the money. But, I know it also is not easy to take in a child that has behavioral issues either. So, so I guess there's kind of I can see both sides. But we'll see some more weird stuff about that as we go on. So the family already had 3 biological sons and 1 adopted daughter when they adopted Jaliek, and these children's ages ranged from 8 to 14 at the time of his disappearance. They lived in a home in the Greenwich hamlet of Casa Una, New York.
Yeah.
And they had no running water in their home. The only toilets that they had were in outhouses. They had no TV, and the only electricity was from a generator that ran a few hours during the day. So I find it awfully odd that they would even let Jaliek go to this home in the first place, because that sounds like a nightmare.
Yeah, how is this a therapeutic home?
I have no idea. I really don't.
I mean, I don't understand. Okay, the no TV thing. Okay,
yeah, sure.
That's pretty weird, but all right, I get that. The generator thing, that sounds really dangerous already. And then, like, yeah, who just goes to a house like that and is like, oh, no running water, toilets outside? Yeah, let's put more children in this situation.
Really, I just do not understand. I don't. Obviously, the foster care system is in shambles, so I understand that, there's so many times. I mean, how many times have you read a story where you're like, how did the foster care, I'm like, the foster care company, the foster care system, the adoption system, CPS, like all of it is just they're overworked. They can't keep, they can't keep up with everything. So, sorry to everybody that's working in those, those areas, but it is in shambles. Okay.
It really is. I mean, there are people who are really trying hard to make sure these situations don't occur.
Exactly.
But you can't be everywhere every day.
Yeah. So, I mean, and I guarantee, like, a 12-year-old child with severe behavioral issues and other issues that make it hard for him to create bonds with people, I don't think they're probably looking too hard into everything. Obviously they're not, because this is crazy. So the family was described as conservationists, and all the children were homeschooled because, according to Kerr, it was better for the environment for them to be homeschooled. I kind of feel like he's a little paranoid, and he's like suspicious of everybody in the outside world a little bit. As we'll go on, you'll see this, but I feel like he's just kind of controlling and abusive, and I don't think he wanted his children to be exposed to the outside world at all. Not because it was better for the environment, but because he was a dickhead.
Yeah.
It
very much seems like that.
Yeah.
I mean, you take away pretty much everything that gives them privacy.
Oh, absolutely. I mean,
so
I didn't even think really about that part of it, but you're so right, because they all slept in one creepy room together, which I didn't really think about the fact that they don't have privacy. I was just thinking that's just weird to begin with. But yeah, all slept in one room, and the kids all ran around naked and stuff, even though, I mean, by that point, they're old enough that's not normal behavior. you know?
No.
I mean,
no.
I'm not a prude, but like that seems a little inappropriate, probably.
That's, yeah.
You know,
that many, there's a difference between like, every now and then the kids, like, they went swimming and then, like, but in like, yeah, like children, but it's like, you said by this point still 8 to 14, right?
Right, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no. You don't have 14-year-olds just running around naked with 8-year-olds.
I know there are people out there that are like, that's the human body's natural. I understand, but like as a society, that's not how we generally are, you know? So it is abnormal. And when you're having just kids doing it, I am just wary about this man in general. I'm like, what is happening here? Well, there's a lot of stuff happening. But yeah, like you said, they're not toddlers. They're old enough that they probably should be wearing clothing. And why are they all sleeping in one room? I mean, it's all very suspicious.
Yeah.
But the icing on the cake here is that although the family lived on the limited electricity, like we said, with just the generator running a couple hours during the day, Stephen Kerr himself had a cell phone and a computer, which is super typical of abusive person who wants to take things away from the people that they're abusing, but they are allowed all these things themselves. So cool. It sounds like a family cult in itself.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yes. He has all the things, all the power, and they have, naked running around together.
They can't
That's
even... But they have no idea that any of the things that are being done are abnormal because they have no exposure to anyone else but themselves, and poor Jaliek had been going from house to house, passed around essentially until he thought he finally, found his family, and this is what he was taken to. So that's, I'm sure, great.
Yeah. And he knows different. So for him, it's putting him in a very weird situation that, again, it's how did this, I mean, I guess the ultimate question always is how does this happen? But
right.
Yeah, it must be very troubling and confusing to him.
Right. I mean, poor Jaliek seemed just never had a chance in his life. Like I talked about earlier, he was exposed to cocaine and alcohol in utero, so he suffered from severe emotional problems and he had violent outbursts as a result. So this is something that had been reported by multiple of the families that he had been living with in the past. And like I said earlier as well, that last family that was going to adopt him, they decided not to because of one of these violent outbursts. He had been diagnosed with RAD, Reactive Attachment Disorder, and, I wanted to talk about that a little bit more. So it's a rare condition that occurs when infants and young children who are subject to extreme neglect or abuse fail to establish that expected bond with a parent. They're diagnosed between the ages of 9 months to 5 years, usually, and the child rarely seeks or responds to comfort when distressed. They show limited positive affect and have unexplained episodes of irritability, sadness, or fearfulness in contact with caregivers. Man, like I said, I can really see how that would be difficult to kind of deal with as a parent or a potential adoptive parent, though you would think somebody that was going into the situation with a child that had this disorder, that they would be somewhat prepared for dealing with it and trying to help them work through it. But it doesn't seem like the parents he was adopted by had any interest in that whatsoever.
Yeah, it really seems like that you would have, if a kid had that, that only a specific type person would be able to take them in to try to,
right,
reverse whatever. I mean, can you, is it something that can be fully treated?
I don't know that they can, you're like, you're cured, but I think that they can definitely help you with the different therapies that they have and also put you on some sort of medication to help you not have these anger issues. Also, it causes depression and anxiety. So there's just like all these different things mixed in with it that, probably would have been greatly helped with some psychological treatment in both therapy and medicine,
Mm-hmm.
I think that these people were a little bit weird and, they called themselves environmentalists or conservationists, but living the way they did, I have a feeling, it doesn't ever say that they were, I never read anywhere they were specifically against medical treatment, but it just seems like, and I'm just making a complete assumption here, so I could be just being an ass, but it seems like they would have been against, you know, getting him the treatment he actually needs to be at least somewhat better, you know, and they not be in fear of him and whatnot. That ends up happening.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, it seems like you can sum that up just by the fact that he had these violent outbursts and these behaviors and no one did anything.
Right. And here, yeah, I mean, true. Like that, the proof is in the pudding here. So his parents, Kerr and McDonald, like I said, they stated that he had temper tantrums that were violent and his 4 siblings were afraid of him and that he was diagnosed with several mental illnesses and reactive attachment disorder. And they also claim that he was homicidal and suicidal at the time of his disappearance. Like we said, despite all that, he wasn't getting any psychological care or medication to help manage the behavior. So that in itself is just mind-boggling, in my opinion. I don't really understand how you would go into that situation knowing that this child had issues like this, knowing that that kind of thing could help him, and telling me that he was homicidal and suicidal, and somehow that was just like, we'll just deal with it by, you know, I mean, to me, that in itself is suspicious. I'm like, you're getting money. You're not helping him get better. What in the hell were you trying to do here?
It really doesn't. It doesn't make sense that that there wasn't any form of help. Not anything. No. I mean, even some form of like treatment would have been nice to see. But yeah, I mean, the second you're like, well, he was homicidal and suicidal. It's like, okay. And you did what?
Right. You didn't do anything.
Yeah.
Until October 23rd, 2007, when Stephen Kerr called a crisis hotline and he said that Jaliek was unmanageable and mentioned that he had threatened another child in his homeschool group. And then he said that his wife was afraid of Jaliek, that he was a danger to the family, and that he no longer wanted him to stay in their home. He said he wanted to reverse the boy's adoption, which, I mean, I don't know a lot about adoption, but I'm pretty sure that's not something that can just be erased in a matter of a second. I don't think that you can just adopt a child, go through that whole process and be like, whoops-a-daisy, I made a mistake.
We'd like to return this one.
This isn't a freaking pair of shoes here.
Yeah.
Good Lord. So the crisis worker said it was not possible, that the adoption was binding, and she suggested that respite care should be tried first.
It seems like the ones that need the more focus,
right,
like direct focus and care, would maybe go to them for a small period of time until maybe they're ready to integrate back into a normal foster care or back to their adoptive home or whatever.
Yeah, right.
That's what it seems like.
Yes, I think you are correct. And so Jaliek was then sent to the home of Elaine and Tom Person. They were a licensed foster home who had provided respite care for him in the past, so he already was familiar with them, and they did seem to care about him a lot because they'll come back into the story later, but they kept Jaliek until November 1st, so it was about a little over a week, I believe. Yes, a little over a week.
23rd.
And then they gave him back to Kerr, and Kerr planned to send him to another respite home on the following day. So if you harken back to the beginning of this episode, you will remember that the last day that Jaliek was seen was that day that the Persons gave him back to Stephen Kerr, November 1st. And that was the night, on that night was the time when he went with his father to his grandfather's home, and his grandfather was out of town on vacation, so the home had been empty that night, and it was just Jaliek and Stephen Kerr staying in that home. Now, his adoptive mother, McDonald, said that this was done to shield the other children from his violent outbursts, which might very possibly be the case. But
this was directly after he left the other home. So
yes.
Was he having outbursts?
Good question.
Is that
good question?
Why he left?
Good question. It didn't.
I guess we don't know.
No, it didn't really say. It's funny. It's not funny, but it is funny because the respite care parents all seem to really just have loved him so much, and I almost wonder if he acted out more with his adoptive mother and father because he was a violent, angry man. I'm almost just like, how much of this was, I know he had violent outbursts, but I'm like, wondering if the people who actually cared for him and loved him, if he, you know, seemed to behave more over at their house than when he was with this jerk.
Yeah, and that would make sense that him leaving the home would maybe cause him to have an outburst.
Yeah, exactly.
Especially when Steven's the one picking him up.
Right.
Yeah.
So Kerr said he woke up at 7:30 in the morning and Jaliek was missing. He claimed that Jaliek stuffed the bed with clothes and sheets and left a note behind. It read, "Dear everybody, I'm sorry for everything. I won't be a bother anymore. Goodbye, Jaliek." So there's some discrepancy about this note because his respite care family said that note was actually a homeschool assignment that Stephen Kerr had given him to do, and they had watched him write it. But Stephen Kerr is now using that note as a excuse for why Jaliek is gone, saying that this is the note he wrote to say that he was running away. So that's interesting. Obviously, you know, you have one side's word against the other, but in this story, I have to trust those respite care foster parents a little bit more than Stephen Kerr. So supposedly he made him write it as an apology.
That sounds like something he would, someone of an abusive type. I guess I don't want to say directly that Stephen is abusive, but yeah. It sounds like something that someone who would control a situation would make someone do for a retribution for whatever.
Yeah. And so, you know, it's just another inconsistency that you'll hear more of in the story. So he calls the police, Stephen Kerr, at 8:57. So that's nearly 90 minutes later after waking up and finding Jaliek missing. And that seems a little bit questionable, I would think. I mean, I guess he could say that he was out looking for him. But I don't think so.
I mean, the time and age we're in, it seems like the first call you make is to the authorities.
Yeah, I mean, at least before 90 minutes later, and it's also they also found out later that before he called 911, he took a shower and dropped movies off at a movie rental place.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's...
I mean, he had a time limit, I guess.
Yeah, those movies were definitely more important than figuring out what happened to 12-year-old Jaliek, who has been on the run for a few hours, supposedly, and has nothing or no transportation, no money, no food, nothing, to help him through.
Yeah. Now, I'll give you a few minutes to, look for him and search the property and whatnot. That makes complete sense. Yeah. But taking a shower and then dropping off some movies...
Bizarre.
I have some question in that.
That's like some Patrick Bateman behavior. Okay. So, the extensive search that they did shortly after this of the area turned no sign up of Jaliek or clues to what happened to him or where he may be. Initially, Kerr claimed that a duffel bag and Jaliek's favorite stuffed animal were missing, but they later found these in his garage. There's another interesting little part of the story. So also, supposedly, he said Jaliek left wearing this yellow jacket that was then later found in Jaliek's old room in the house because the family later moves out of the house, but they found that his grandmother found that yellow jacket in his room. What was his room before they moved out, before he went missing. So Stephen Kerr said he took a duffel bag, he took a stuffed animal, and he was wearing a yellow jacket, and all three of those things were found in that home, their home where they lived. So,
I mean... You find the things that he would take.
I just don't
missing. Yeah. You say they're missing, and then you find them, and there's still
nothing.
There's still no question with this.
The police, initially, the police were always very suspicious of Stephen Kerr, and he, has claimed that they were just out to get him from the get-go, and they've been completely honest about everything. But we'll find out as I continue on that there's even more bullshit that he has said that they find out isn't true at all. He's just a skis. I mean, listen here. I wouldn't have done this podcast to begin with if I didn't think something was bizarre about the story or somebody needed to, be held accountable. So yeah, I'm going to just tell it like it is. He's a skis. I keep feeling guilty about it. And then I'm like, you know what? If someone really gets mad at me about this, you can go suck an egg.
Well, I mean, ultimately, he's never proved any of this stuff to make sense to us. So
that's true.
I mean, that's just what it seems like, is that if there's still question on it, I obviously don't know the end of it yet, but
well, it's nothing real satisfying. So they also supposedly found a note that had just the word Albany on it, which is where Jaliek's half brothers lived. And so the couple, Kerr and McDonald, are saying that perhaps he went off and ran to his half brothers. I'm like, do they even know he exists, or how old are they?
Yeah.
You know, like, Jaliek had no money, no credit cards, a car. He had nothing. He had no contacts. He has issues making connections with other people, and somehow he just schmoozed his way over to Albany to visit it, or to just go live with his half brothers. I just highly, highly doubt that.
No.
Yeah, they say some of the most bizarre shit. I'll tell you that right now. Like, you're gonna be literally dying at some of the stuff that they say.
Well, I mean, put aside the fact that he doesn't have the funds or the capability of getting there. He doesn't. Like you said, he has issues with people.
Right.
So it's not like it's not an easy task. It's not like he would make that decision lightly.
Right.
And I would think that if he knew his half brothers, we would have, had more contact or more information about them by this point.
Right. And also, yeah, it's not like if he had some sort of actual blood family who wanted to have him in their life, then it seems like maybe he would have been in their life and not been going from foster home to foster home. So I just definitely doesn't sound like he just somehow made his way over to Albany, but we'll continue. So a few days following his disappearance, police announced that they believe that Jaliek met with foul play and categorized him as endangered missing, as it was unlikely that someone his age without money or without contacting family could survive on their own, which is pretty obvious. So,
yep.
Yeah. They also kept the possibility that he ran away or committed suicide in the equation. So they didn't entirely rule them out. But like we said, he also had no history of running away whatsoever. And he had no money. He had nothing, no connections, no blood family outside of his foster care system. Okay. I would run away if I were Jaliek. I mean, I wouldn't blame him for running away, but I don't think that's what happened, because it seems like we probably would have seen something from him in the past 12 years that he's been missing or something. Okay, although we know polygraph tests are BS in the first place, like, no one's using a polygraph test to convict anybody. That said, McDonald, the mother, the adoptive mother, took one, but Kerr has refused to do so, and he claimed it was because of a medical condition that would make his response unreliable. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
He also refused to submit a DNA sample, and I'm like, oh, what's a medical condition that doesn't allow you to do that, you idiot? So I find that to be fairly suspicious that he refused to provide a DNA sample and refused to do a polygraph test. It's just,
yeah, I mean, if you maintain your innocence, right? Why refuse things? And if the medical thing is the problem, then fine, still take it.
Yeah, don't be such a bitch. Like, I don't.
Yeah.
But I mean, he just doesn't cooperate, and that's the other thing. He literally hasn't spoken to the police. But he literally completely stopped talking to the police shortly after the disappearance of Jaliek, and just refused to cooperate with them altogether. So that's, I understand, protecting your rights and not letting the police just run you over and convict you on something you haven't done, but I just don't think that's what you're doing here, because you're going over the top. It's very reminiscent of like the Ramseys, where they're just like, no, and it's like, wait a second, your child has been possibly killed or kidnapped or whatever, and if you really cared, I think you would cooperate to some degree.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, especially if there's a chance that the child's alive, you would think you would do pretty much anything you could.
You would think. But, a week prior to this, they were trying to get rid of him. So
yeah,
doesn't look too good on that situation. It's like pretty indicative of, wait a second, they didn't want him and then they couldn't get rid of him, and then it's like, okay, I see what's going on here. Even Jaliek's adoptive grandmother sees what's going on here. Her name is Barbara Reilly. She is the grandmother of Jaliek on the maternal side, and she says that she was with the family the day after his disappearance, and she noticed a number of odd behaviors. She says she saw her daughter Jocelyn McDonald laugh at a friend who offered to search for Jaliek. That's weird.
Yeah, that's not a normal reaction.
It's like,
unless you know something,
or you're nervous, or was the friend joking around? Like, what in the hell?
Yeah, I understand that everyone reacts differently to trauma and grief and shock, but like, it just seems weird for your friend to be like, "Hey, I would love to help search for your son," and you just laugh.
Yeah, I can't even imagine the scenario in which that would even be the response that you would get ever, even if you're just like traumatized. Seems weird.
Yeah, it just doesn't make sense. It's just. It would either be something's very much wrong with her, and I think you would notice way more than just this one thing.
Yeah.
It just seems like it's an odd choice to make if you're faking your grief.
Right.
I don't know.
It's definitely weird all around. Yes, definitely.
Yep.
And then Barbara also saw Stephen Kerr rub his eyes roughly in an apparent effort to look like he'd been crying before he talked to the media. I just don't know why this lady would make that up,
No.
And it's her own daughter, so it's not like she clearly is like, this something messed up happened here to this boy. And so all of the rest of it is overridden by the fact that she knows something horrible happened to this young child, I think.
Yeah.
Obviously.
Yeah. I mean, she wouldn't, there's no benefit for her to just be making this up.
No.
None at all.
No. She also says that they didn't walk down the streets at all to just kind of search for him, calling his name, or they didn't go door to door to ask anybody if they had seen him. And she felt like those were things that she would have obviously done if it were her child, and that she actually did herself at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah. So she really did seem to have bonded with Jaliek. She said, "I can still feel his arms around me and his head on my shoulder. He really needed validation that he was loved." That is the saddest thing I've ever read in my life. I mean, clearly he just needed love.
And she seems like she really did care very much for him and understood exactly what he needed to succeed in life.
Which isn't like a ton, I think he just needed stability and love, but yeah. And also obviously he had some behavioral issues, but she didn't seem to be focusing on that. She said that he was a vivacious boy, that he loved to go apple picking, eat ice cream and pizza. He liked to stay over at her house, which he called Granny Camp, and that he play. He is also adorable. Mm-hmm. But anyway, okay. So he played music and also played with tarot cards and on the computer. So I'm like, oh man, that Stephen Kerr did not like this Granny Camp at all.
Nope. No.
When I read tarot cards, I was like, oh, geez. He was like,
yeah.
And
she let him do things that obviously he couldn't do at
their house.
Steven's house.
Yeah. Yeah. So that also just goes to kind of lend itself that perhaps Steven is the one. We know he did, but Stephen is really probably the one that created this whole family lockdown situation, because it doesn't seem like Jocelyn McDonald came from that type of situation. And of course she could have, also made the decision to be in that type of situation. But I think it just seems like he's abusive all around, and like she's probably also a victim of his abuse too. So
yeah, it's
hard for me to understand some of her motivations here in this story, but at the same time, when I think about it that way, it's like, oh yeah, I can understand.
Yeah, that's kind of, you're right. She didn't come from an environment, it's clear, that was like that.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming that if he was like that when they met or when they first got together, it seems like that was, I'm not sure what her choice, why her choice would have been him if she was from a home that was different.
Yeah.
But it could have also been, charmed her in, and then later on things change.
Yeah.
And, it's an unfortunate, like you said, it's an unfortunate situation because she's also a victim here. So
yeah, though, I mean, if she knows something, then she should also be held responsible for not
Agreed.
sharing that for sure. It's just hard because I'm like, gosh, I just kind of had the revelation that I'm like, she kind of has a victim here too, probably. But the grandmother, again, one last thing that she had said about Jaliek, she said he was going to grow up to be a strong individual with a yearning to have a family and a stable base, that he had hopes and dreams for his future, which he wasn't able to ever have because perhaps that Stephen did something to him. So really believes that her son-in-law knows more than he's sharing and possibly murdered Jaliek. She says his anger issues and behavior over the years had led her to believe that he is capable of harming a child. She said, and I quote, "Stephen has anger issues. I think it was 3 years ago. Jaliek was doing some repetitive behavior, and Stephen grabbed him by the neck and dragged him out the back door and dunked him in the creek. And if my daughter had not been there, I don't know what else he would have done to him." Whoa, dude. In my head, I had remembered this situation as he was being violent, Jaliek, but she just said he was doing some repetitive behavior, so it's not even remotely the same thing. So that's even more sad. I'm not to say that it's his fault if he was being violent, because it's really not either, but there's the fact that Stephen got so mad at him doing something repetitive that probably just annoyed him and dragged him out by the neck and dunked him in the creek. Like, he clearly didn't think about him like he was his son, or I don't know. I mean, I guess you can beat your son too, but God, it just doesn't seem like he.
I mean, I don't think that any form of discipline includes dunking someone in a creek.
I mean that is just torture.
Yeah. And that's the thing again here. If you're a frustrated individual because of the person that you have agreed to take in, then you knew that coming into it. So you have to learn to be patient because you're dealing with somebody who, beyond their control, has been put in a situation multiple times that has left them to behave in the way they do.
I mean, that is just despicable behavior. I mean, it is shocking to me that you can adopt a child that has special needs with that kind of person being the person that adopts them. Like, I mean, I just can't even wrap my brain around.
Yeah. I agree.
How that could be possible. What a piece of that alone, he's a fucking piece of garbage. That's it. Like, that's it. So, yeah, like, we don't really need to get any further in the story for me to be like, he's fucking piece of trash, everybody.
Yeah. That's a certification piece of trash right there.
Gross. So apparently after that, his wife made him write a letter of apology to Jaliek and made him do the child's chores for a month after he dragged him outside and dunked him in the creek, which I'm sure only just pissed him off more.
Yeah. Pissed him off more because, it's just like, it's like poking the bear. Yeah. Really.
I mean,
especially the writing of a letter.
Oh yeah. I mean, because I wonder if that letter that he had Jaliek write, if he did that before or after she made him write him a letter, Yeah.
I'm interested in knowing that.
Yeah, it would be nice to know. So Barbara really also says that in the year prior to Jaliek's disappearance, that McDonald asked Stephen Kerr, to move out of the house 2 times because of his anger issues, and they were posing a threat to the children. So not just Jaliek, but everybody. 2 times in the year leading up to Jaliek's disappearance. Also, he was in anger management classes, but it obviously wasn't making any difference, or wasn't doing too much good if while being in those classes, he had to be asked to leave the house twice because he was scary angry. And I got some pictures of him, and I'm not trying to judge a book by its cover, but I guess knowing what a piece of shit he is and then seeing him, I'm like, this man looks exactly how I would expect him to. I like this fucking dickhead. Okay. I mean, I know, and here every time I record and I start talking shit, I always am like, well, I know there's like 15 fucking dudes out there that listen to this podcast, perhaps that look exactly like him, but what am I gonna say? My brother, actually.
Hey, but that's the thing. Some guys look like that, or look like certain ways, and you're like, or some people look certain ways, and they're a whole different person.
Definitely
and
true.
It's like, okay,
yes.
that's cool. I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about this douchebag.
Yeah. I'm talking about this kid dunking in the river dickhead.
Yeah.
So due to the suspicions that Barbara really has of Stephen Kerr, she and her daughter have obviously grown apart. And at the time when I was reading all this stuff, I was like, why is that lady still staying with this dude and covering up for him and all this stuff? But then like I just said, I had the revelation, oh, she's being abused too.
Yeah.
But I feel like people like that, they're going to just pick on anybody that they can.
Yeah, I mean, she's part of that whole situation in that house too. So it would make sense that that's why she sticks with him, more than just being someone who, you know, doesn't care herself. It doesn't seem like she's someone who's fully not sensitive to the situation.
Right. You know, I guess she stopped him from probably killing him once before, at least, that we know about.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in the summer of 2008, Barbara really went into the family's home to search for any evidence of what happened to her grandson. This was because the family had moved to Vermont 4 months after Jaliek went missing. The family completely vacated the entire house in New York and moved to Vermont.
That's convenient.
Yeah. Okay, I get that perhaps you just need to start anew or whatever, but you're not even really worried about the kid to begin with, so I don't really think it's that you're so distressed that you can't bear to live there. And if you really, it seems like from a lot of the cases I've read, if a parent's child goes missing, a lot of the time they have a really hard time leaving that place because they are always thinking, well, if they ever come back, they'll come back to the place that they remember, which is this house.
Exactly.
So I find that very suspicious.
Yeah.
Yeah. So she went to that vacant house. That's when she found that yellow jacket that Jaliek supposedly was wearing when he ran away. And the house was vacated, like I said. They had left a few big pieces of furniture behind, but that was it. And that jacket and a couple other things that, you know, of Jaliek's and stuff, because they didn't really care about him. Or at least Steven didn't care about him. And they actually ended up charging her. I don't really know how they found out, but they ended up charging her for burglary for entering the house to begin with. So,
well, that doesn't make you sound guilty at all.
No, that's definitely not suspicious.
That sounds like a diversion.
Yeah. She later went to court to petition for custody of her missing grandson, which just that in itself, I'm like, clearly she's like one of the only people that even loves this child. You know, like Jaliek's missing and been missing for over a year, and she's petitioning for custody of him. And his own parents are ripping down missing flyers of his around town. Oh, it is so disturbing. Oh, so the couple contends that Jaliek ran away, and I quote, is living somewhere with other African Americans or in a gang. Because Jaliek, like, are you fucking with me right now?
Yeah.
I mean, I just cannot even believe some of this shit. Okay, so anyway, because Jaliek always considered himself to be African American rather than biracial and had wanted to live with other African Americans. Okay, and Kerr even once made the following serious what the fuck statement. He said, every time we went through a predominantly African American neighborhood, he was like a kid in a candy shop. Can we stop there and go shopping? I'm 100% sure he's in an urban setting with an African American community. He's the most, I feel like there's like some serious underlying racism there as well.
Yeah.
Like you can talk about a biracial person's, you know, Black heritage all you want, but like the way he's talking about it is so fucking weird. The way he says that he ran away to an African American community or he's in a gang. Yeah. Like what?
Yeah,
are you
like
talking about?
That's the only two options. That's it.
That's it. And also, the 12-year-old boy who had trouble making a connection with his own possible adopted parents was somehow able to get into a gang somehow, and like the gang is taking care of him better than they could, apparently.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, what a stupid. I am just so I don't know. I feel like this is so strange. Like, he's so focused on this. But I guess he's a freaking idiot, and he's trying to make excuses for why this child is not there anymore. So I guess it's not going to make any sense. Or
yeah, I mean, it sounds like he's trying to just create a connection that they can go down and look down that will just, of course, be like, well, this doesn't make any sense, or it'll just lead us down this whole rabbit hole.
Yeah, I mean, what an idiot.
A gang. He ran off and joined a gang. That's it. That's all you got.
That's how it goes. That's how it goes, man. Don't you know? Police quickly debunked that claim and declared Jaliek's stepfather a person of interest in his son's disappearance. That's what I'm saying.
As they should.
Yeah. I hate his guts, okay? I can't wait for you all to look at his picture, too, and just... Everybody should just go punch him somewhere. Just kidding. I guess that's inciting a threat type of situation, but he's grotesque.
Yeah, you should at least go look at him intensely with a bad stern,
yes,
look on your face.
Side eye the fuck out of him.
Just tell him he was a bad dad. yeah,
from across the road. Just get a big group.
Throw some shade. Do what you gotta do.
He deserves all of it.
Yes.
Okay. So they extensively searched their home and the paternal grandfather's home because they suspected that Jaliek might have been buried there. This is like super rural, the house where they had stayed that night, and apparently there's a bunch of wooded area around, so who the heck knows if he's buried there. I mean, surely they would have found some sign of that. I have a feeling he's probably not on their property, but we'll continue.
That would make sense.
You would think. I mean, he might be an idiot, but I don't know if he's that stupid.
Yeah. It doesn't seem like it. I mean, if you're going to do what we're going to allegedly may have happened here, it seems like you would have at least been smart about that idea.
Right. And I mean, so far it seems like if it did happen, he got away with it.
Yeah.
Police, forest rangers, and the FBI have all combed the woods and waterways around the Washington County towns of Cambridge and Greenwich, and even the campgrounds where the family supposedly had vacationed multiple times. Police later found, like I said, that yellow fleece jacket in the garage, as well as the stuffed animal and the duffel bag. And like, I know I've repeated it 7 times, but just remember that he said he took these things and then they're found at his house. That just does not add up.
Which now concludes that he had absolutely nothing with him when he quote unquote ran away.
Right.
Yeah.
So it was, it was fall. It was actually, I don't know. I mean, it wasn't quite winter yet, but you could still, I bet you it's pretty cold.
What, November in New York?
Yeah.
That's pretty, I mean, it's not cold, but at night it is.
Yeah.
It's cool.
Okay.
I mean, Virginia is not where I'm not that far from New York. We're about 6 hours. So, I mean, November here, you get warm days, but the nights are still cold.
Right.
He definitely needed a jacket.
A jacket for sure. Let alone the fact that he had nothing else. And, you can get hypothermia well above freezing, temperatures. So I'm sure they would have found him somewhere if he had just run away. He's not, he doesn't fly.
Yeah. And if he's in a wooded area, that's even cooler because of I guess the leaves are, they still have some leaves on them, but so it's not something that people would survive easily.
Yeah. Let alone a little kid.
Especially a young kid.
Yeah, and he was 12 years old. He weighed 105 pounds, so he would have been freezing his little buns off if he was just outside. Police also later found that Kerr had lied to them in a number of his statements, but they still didn't have enough to actually charge him with a crime. So it's one of those situations where it's just the most frustrating thing in the world.
Yeah.
He claims that he slept straight through the night when Jaliek went missing, but the police found surveillance footage of his van being driven that night. It was around a bank, and I mean, obviously, it was just dry. I don't know what he was doing. If he was, they didn't really say if he was getting money out of the bank, but he definitely drove by the bank. It was his specific gold van, and because of this being on the surveillance, they wanted to search the van again because they had kind of done a cursory search of it, I guess, initially, but he denied their second request to search their van.
Of course he did.
Of course. It was about 12:16 a.m. whenever the van was seen on that surveillance footage, which was in Glen Falls. No, it was in Greenwich. It was at Glen Falls National Bank. So 12:16 a.m. is somewhat late. I know, for me, because I'm a grandma, it is. The guy said he was asleep all night long, and he was definitely asleep by 12:16. So what was he doing driving around if that was his van?
Yeah. Yeah, maybe, unless he was sleep driving. But,
yeah, I'm sure.
Still not good. But yeah, you would think that if he went to this abandoned house, well, not abandoned, but his father's house.
Unoccupied,
Yeah, unoccupied. Thank you. That's the word. Unoccupied house because of a behavioral issue, with his son. It's not like, yeah, you're not going to be up at midnight after an exhausting couple hours with dealing with the situation.
Right.
Yeah.
And why would you tell the police that you were asleep through the night anyway, if that wasn't the case? So that's weird, because at least you would say, well, we had to drive around to calm him down. Not
exactly.
like Jaliek was a baby, but, he's suspicious all around. So the Greenwich Police Chief, George Bell, said, if it's Stephen and his van, it certainly doesn't indicate that, he says he was in bed. I'm like, but so, okay, kind of a silly quote a little bit. But this police chief, George Bell, really did, dedicate his entire rest of his life trying to figure out what happened here. Or he thinks he knows what happened here. They analyzed Kerr's cell phone data that night and found his cell phone pinged multiple times in areas far away from his father's home, where, again, he claimed he was the whole night and never left.
Yeah, sleeping. Sleeping the whole night.
Yeah, sleeping the whole night. So his phone just magically escaped in his car. Jaliek, I guess he's going to say, Jaliek took my car out and ran around town.
And then came back
phone.
And then ran away. Without the car.
Oh, and I never woke up. Oh, good. So, God. Okay, so Kerr said he received a call around 8:15 that night when he was on Route 40, and it says he was in front of a place called Henry's Garage in Melrose at the time. But this was later found to be a lie, as the call came in when he was in South Troy, New York. So he's driving around, his phone is pinging off towers, and anyway, at 8:15 that night, yes, he says he got a call. He says it was in one place. It was later found that he was in a completely different place, and the person who called him said that he seemed extremely agitated on the phone. Interesting.
Yeah. Which, again, giving him the benefit of the doubt would make sense if there was the issue with an outburst, but also why would you just wouldn't answer the phone?
Yeah, and why also would you lie about it again? Why would you also lie about the place where you got the call to begin with?
Yeah, exactly.
I just don't understand. Why would you lie at all?
Yeah.
If you didn't do anything, why would you lie at all?
Yeah.
There's no reason to lie.
No.
Okay, so Kerr has been caught by multiple people tearing down missing persons posters for his son, which he initially denied doing, and then he later admitted that he only had asked shop owners to remove them, but his ass was full on ripping them down, witnessed on numerous occasions by numerous people. So what in the hell would you be ripping down missing persons flyers for your missing 12-year-old son who ran away?
Yeah, unless you're putting up new ones, it makes no sense at all.
That's just abhorrent.
Yeah.
I don't think you would ever do that.
No.
I just don't think. I know, like you said, I know everybody deals with things differently. I'm pretty sure if your kid runs away, even if you think he's, a terror, I would still think you would be worried about his safety, and maybe if anybody ever saw any little thing that could help you figure out where he was, you would want to do it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's just like, it's very rare that you ever, unless there's some form of evidence to sway you, which he hasn't been given yet.
No.
There's no reason for you to stop looking or to stop asking ever.
I mean, every single thing he does makes him look terrible, I mean, it's like every single thing.
You're right. Everything that makes him look like a good, concerned father, he chooses the opposite to do.
Right. Here's another one. He also refused to attend a vigil for Jaliek, saying that he didn't like the people that put on the vigil because they slandered him. Which, I mean, okay, I kind of understand, but at the same time, it's just like,
well, then have your own.
Have your own. I mean, I don't know. He says
and then if that was the case, you have your own, and then there's no fuel for anyone's fire.
I think that they did. I think he did have one, but I think like initially, and then that was like, it was the one and only one they ever did. And then this one was put on, I guess, it probably was put on by his mother-in-law, who did slander him. I guess you can agree to that, but at the same time, I don't know. Okay, I'll give him that one. I guess I'll give him that one. I'll let him have it.
That one.
Yeah.
I'll give him a point for that one. Okay.
One thing.
I'll concede.
Yeah. He claims that he's cooperated with the police from the get-go and that they've wanted to string him up the whole time, which it's like, yeah, they did because you clearly have something to do with it. And you lied. And you lied all over the place. I mean, that's the point here, is that you've lied about everything. Yeah. So, lead detective Bell says that Kerr's behavior was strange all along and that he never once called them to check on the investigation or get updates on his son's disappearance. Which, there we go, again, is very strange. Like, how many missing persons cases do you hear where the parents are just calling the police to the point where they have to be like, don't call us, we'll call you.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't make sense that you wouldn't be asking for updates as much as possible.
You would think you would. Bell said, in 30 years, a kid of 12 years old, and I don't care what his mindset is, he doesn't fall off the face of the world. We just don't have a runaway kid here. So that's the lead detective in the case. He's saying that there's no way Jaliek ran away. That's it. They would have figured it out. They would have found something by that point.
Yeah, exactly.
4 months after Jaliek disappeared, the family moved, and then that is when Stephen Kerr never once spoke with the police ever again. Never cooperated, never did anything with them ever again. Sure sounds like you care about finding Jaliek when you do that.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds like you close that chapter and you're ready for the next one.
Yeah. Because here's his former foster mother, Jody Schoen, the one that was going to adopt him, but didn't because of his violent outburst against the daughter they already had. You know, she loves him. She's talking about the things that he liked to do. And then she says, he was our son and you don't stop loving someone just because he can't live with you. But it sure seems like Stephen Kerr was like, the moment that Jaliek's not around, he forgets who the hell he was. Mm-hmm. And I'm just going to keep coming back to him because he's such an asshole. Jaliek's former respite care foster mother, Elaine Person, and his grandmother, Barbara Reilly, they started a task force to find out what happened to him. And if it wasn't for them, I honestly don't even know if this story would be really publicized too much.
Yeah.
Because they really have kept the attention on Jaliek's missing status, and also, you know, both of them are not real shy about talking about what they think probably happened to him. Mm-hmm. They brought in Texas EquiSearch, who conducted underwater searches with sonar. They brought in a drone with a high-resolution camera, and they searched the area to no avail. Elaine temporarily quit her job to dedicate her full time to searching for what happened to Jaliek.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, these people, I just don't understand why the people who finalized an adoption with him were like the one people that seemed to not be able to see anything good in him. You know, like, yeah, what is that? That seems so strange.
You have these two people who see, you know, all the good in him and just do everything they can, including quit a job and dedicate their entire lives to just finding out what happened, whether it's, you know, a body to resolve it, or him alive, which would be obviously the hopeful case. But
right, yeah, I mean, it's just sad. I'm very glad that there were actually like at least a few people who actually did care enough to do all this stuff. But it is really sad that his own parents are just like, see ya, didn't ever think about you again after that.
It really is a contrast, a very, very stark contrast when you hear about the foster mother, or the former foster mother and the grandmother. Yeah. Because it's like the people that should be doing this are kicking it in Vermont right now.
Yeah. Big time living it up, just without Jaliek.
Yep. Just hanging out.
So Elaine Person, she started a fundraiser, held vigils, created a website for him, and she's been rallying for change in the foster care system, saying that the lack of oversight in the system is what led to Jaliek's disappearance, because he should never have been allowed to stay with a family who had no running water or electricity. And that's true. For sure.
Very much agreed with that.
Yes. She says that Jaliek told her that he was often locked in his bedroom and he would be punished for bad behavior by being dunked in the creek. So Kerr blamed Jaliek for his behavioral issues, which, had he not been a reactive piece of shit, he should have had patience with the child and known he was not to blame for his behavior, as he had suffered, like we said, both physical trauma and emotional trauma as a young child that led to him having these, you know, repetitive behaviors, these violent outbursts, things that as we already discussed a million times, but I'm just going to keep repeating it. You, as a foster parent or as an adoptive parent, going into the situation with a child that has these issues, you should have been at least somewhat prepared for this instead of just being a violent, angry person who seems to not know how to handle anybody at all remotely close to having the kind of issues that Jaliek had. I just do not I just do not get this at all. I mean, it's like,
not at all.
No, it's like another child adopted Jaliek, essentially.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yep.
And one who gets all the power, where he can have a cell phone and a computer, but you don't get anything.
Yeah, and I mean, it's just so sad to think that he had so much trauma in his life, and then he was adopted by somebody that locked him in his room for, days on end because he probably annoyed him. So, I hate this guy so much. I can't even tell you. This might be my second most hated man under David Berg from The Children of God, I think. Like, I think I hate him almost as much.
Yeah, a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, the fact that you just up and stop talking to the cops, it's like, I mean, there's so many things you can point to, but that to me is the sticking thing where it's like, okay, well, you obviously don't care and you're the last person that saw him.
Yeah.
So I don't know what else to think of you than you're a piece of shit.
Yeah. And yeah, that is exactly what you are.
Yeah.
So Elaine Person, she says that Stephen Kerr and Jocelyn McDonald continued to receive that $1,700 a month stipend even after he went missing. And I don't know for how long. But wow, isn't that convenient for them?
That's helpful for their house that doesn't have running water or electricity.
That's the other thing that I was thinking.
And now one less mouth to feed.
Well, I guess perhaps that freaking stipend was like supporting their entire family for all we know, because I'm like, what did he do? I don't even know.
Yeah.
Ugh. Well, yeah. Oh my God.
That's plenty of money for you to turn the electricity on.
I highly doubt they were having some huge lavish meals, I bet. Oh, okay. So yeah, who, like, that loser? I mean, who freaking knows? Because the house, I found some pictures, and the house was pretty dilapidated, as you might imagine, considering the circumstances. I mean, I can't even imagine living in a house that doesn't have a sink that can give me water when I need it. That alone. Oh, God.
Yeah. No, I agree. I couldn't imagine living in a house without water. I mean, that's like, to me, the best invention was indoor plumbing.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, having to run outside to take a poop in the middle of the night or whatever would not be fun. And let alone, like, I need to wash my hands. I mean, what did they do for a shower?
Yeah.
Seriously, what did they do? Just buckets of water that they got out of the creek or what? I mean,
well, I can't imagine that this area of New York and this in the early 2000s was so expensive that a stipend of $1,500 a month that you're getting for a kid that you're not supposed to use the money towards, but that you can't set something up better for your entire family. That's not that much. Like, that's a decent amount of money for you to be able to at least cover the basic bills. You would think.
But, yeah, what's he doing with this money? I mean, good grief. I don't even know.
Yeah.
He's just a garbage. So, he's a garbage. So, in early January 2008, a letter was sent to media and the family claiming that Jaliek was still alive and probably being held by someone. And the letter is weird as hell. Okay, I'm going to read it. I don't really know what the heck's going on, but okay. So it says, Jaliek still alive, needed a foot soldier for this war on drugs, picked him up right 40 post 30. I don't, RT 40 post.
Probably Route 40.
Route 40 post 30. He's okay. No fake. He says, ask his mama and papa, who are the Macaroni family? My cat named Diamond, ? Why does Franti yell fire, ? Don't try to look, we are not there. That's the letter. I have no idea.
Yeah. After the he's okay, it kind of goes off the rails there.
Yeah. Who are the Macaroni family? So Franti is like some musician that had a song where he was talking about fire or something. But other than that, oh, and actually their cat was named Diamond. He did have a cat named Diamond.
Okay.
So who knows what the hell it means, but I'll tell you that the police suspected that Stephen Kerr wrote the letter to throw them off of his trail. And they seized his computer afterwards, but they were unable to determine if the letter was written on it. Yeah, I mean, I have no idea. It
definitely seems like it could be something to just throw people off. I mean, it has just enough in it where it's like, well, does that confirm that he may be alive? Because how would you know that he had a cat named Diamond? But then it's like, well, how many people knew he had a cat named Diamond?
Yeah, I just feel like he absolutely did write it. I feel like it's not even funny, but I'm laughing. But I feel like his desperate attempts to make the police think certain things are just so blatantly pathetic and stupid. You know, it's like that fits right along with him saying he joined a gang or an African American community. You know, like he's just.
It's like the things that he does tell the cops. It's like, what are you doing? Like, why? Just keep your mouth shut.
Yeah,
just don't say anything.
So poor Barbara Reilly, the grandmother, she says that if she could choose between somebody being in prison for murdering Jaliek or finding his remains, she would much rather choose to put him to rest. And so she's just still to this day just hoping with all hope that they find Jaliek's body, because she just doesn't want him to be laying out there somewhere without being able to properly bury him.
Yeah,
which is definitely sad.
Oh, very much so. And it's I agree. It would be much better just to know what happened to him.
I mean, it is outrageous that somebody can. It's just like every other freaking case that we cover where this person is just vulnerable, you know? And because they're vulnerable for whatever reason, there's somebody in their life that takes advantage of them and they end up gone forever because some asshole takes advantage of them, and because they don't have the connections or whatever, they end up being able to just get away with it. It kills me. It really kills me. Like I said, at least he had a few people in his life that loved him while he was here. That's the only thing I can take away from that.
Yeah.
You know, still kind of more than sucks that he's out there somewhere that we have no idea.
Well, and it would make sense that if he was out there alive and able to speak or let people know what's going on, he would, after knowing that there are people out there that are, you know, forever heartbroken over this.
Yeah, I mean, and it seemed like he was definitely close to this grandmother, and he would, you would think at some point he would reach out at some point, or someone would have seen him or something. In 2016, there was a skull fragment found in the Coxsackie Swamp, I think, maybe, near the Hudson River. They initially thought it was a child's skull that was around the same age as Jaliek, but it was later confirmed to not be his skull, and it was actually an adult male. So that kind of brought everybody a little hope for a second, but it turned out to not be him. And, you know, that's the other aspect of the situation, is that they can't determine cause of death or things like that, and maybe if they had a body, they would be able to more easily try to pin this on Stephen Kerr or get him convicted of committing some crime. But without a body, they can do it, but it's hard to convict somebody without a body.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely, that's the biggest piece of evidence you could have is the body.
Right.
And without it, it really does make things a lot harder. So it makes sense why they can't. Their hands are basically tied on this case.
Yeah. And like, you know, as we've seen before, you don't want to charge somebody with something and then because of the lack of evidence, they get off and you can't charge them again. So they want to make sure, you know, that they've got everything, but man, it's like, I don't know. Is it ever going to happen is really the question.
Yeah.
In 2017, the lead detective on the case, Chief Bell, he said that he had not given up on the case, that he believed the adoptive father is still the main person of interest, and that somebody has more information and needs to come forward, which I think we can all agree that somebody does have more information. At the time, he said that he kept the file close and was still searching for possible leads. He said it could be the missing piece or pieces that could bring everything together so that they could find him, and expressed his desire for a grand jury to look at the details surrounding Jaliek's disappearance, but that has yet to take place. Sadly, Detective Bell died last year in 2018, which was a pretty huge blow to Jaliek's grandmother, Barbara Reilly.
Yeah.
Obviously, I'm wondering, if anyone has even taken the case on now since he died. I did not find the next detective's name.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's now like 12 years old.
Mm-hmm. And I'm sure for her, I mean, you get close with somebody who's kind of, they're resolute in finding out what happened, and then just shows you, it really shows you how much time has passed since he's gone missing, and now I'm sure that for Barbara that is a little bit of a setback for her.
Right. Like, she said that he was always willing to talk to her over the phone, or was fine if she dropped by the station when he was there, even though it had been over 10 years since Jaliek disappeared, which I think that's awesome, considering that I've heard a million times, police that just have no contact with families after a certain amount of time. Yeah. So he obviously cared.
Yeah. Obviously a good detective.
Yes, which, I'm always appreciative to find. So he's led dozens of searches. He always considered every lead, and he even talked to psychics, which I don't know that I believe in, but, I know that there are some cases where police have, talked to psychics and something came of it. Whether it's a coincidence or not, I don't know. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it could just be, somebody who is quote unquote clairvoyant, if whether they are allegedly or not, I don't know, but that's kind of whatever you believe, but they're open-minded. And sometimes an open mind thinks creatively, where an atypical mind, which in police work is normally the way you go, you don't always think of those creative possibilities. So I think it's more of, if they happen to be right, it's like, it's a damn good guess.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of it's just because they do think they just work their brain differently.
Yeah.
And in some cases that just happens to work for it.
And that's so true. And honestly, I don't know, I'm not trying to backpedal, but I will say that a lot of the times about paranormal stuff, I'm almost like, the mind is such a powerful thing, but maybe if you're able to kind of like harness some sort of heightened level of thinking, maybe you are able to kind of do things that are unexplainable to us at this point.
Well, but I mean, again, I don't think that necessarily, you can just think of it as in a skeptical way. It's like, okay, well, things have happened, but does that necessarily constitute meaning that everyone who has something happen to them is real?
True.
And just because it happened to you maybe not necessarily means that it's real for you too. It's such a questionable thing. I've always approached it with, if the person, what they're telling me makes sense, okay, I can't explain it, I'm a little skeptic of it, but I'm not going to dismiss it. And I think that's probably what this gentleman was doing as well. I'm sorry, was it Bell? Was that his name?
Yeah, Bell. Yeah, Bell.
Bell. Yeah, I think it sounded like it was kind of the way he thought is, okay, well, I'll entertain it because it's a fresh idea.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I think that's just good police work.
Right. Good. I agree. Good. I was like, good. I was agreeing with you about it being good police work, but yeah. Okay. So, oh yeah, poor Barbara. She was just saying that he always made her feel better and he kept her from falling apart. Oh, poor Barbara.
Yeah.
And Bell's widow said that Jaliek's case was constantly on his mind, and every time a body was found, he wondered if he had finally been found. So, again, to emphasize that, I saw in some places people were kind of talking shit about the police department, and I was like, it really does seem like this man tried really hard. I do understand also where they're coming from, where it's like, how can this man have gotten away with it? Like, it seems insane to me, but at the same time, like, I think he did try really hard. He wasn't trying to make somebody out to be guilty that wasn't. I think he really wanted to make sure that he had all the evidence he needed against him, but he never was able to get that while he was alive.
And I mean, that's the thing. It's like, okay, well, police work and the legal system to an extent can only do but so much. It's, if the information and the evidence just isn't there, it's set up so that innocent people don't end up in situations where they're paying sometimes in their entire life for a crime they didn't commit.
Exactly.
And it's unfortunate because people who happen to be guilty of a crime can sometimes get away with it because we have the system set up that way.
Exactly.
And that's where the only thing you can do is be frustrated with, that fucking person.
Yeah. Well, Daniel just needs to hit him with this truck.
Yeah, definitely get Daniel with the truck. He'll take care of it.
Yeah. Like, I have a trip. I'm just kidding. I'm not going to. So I'm like, I'm going to come down there and get him. Or come up there. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So, excuse me. So, when it comes down to theories in this case, I really don't have more than one, being that Stephen Kerr, who had a well-known history of anger problems, having been in anger management and still having to have his wife ask him to leave the house for the safety of his children, his mother-in-law witnessing extremely aggressive and abusive behavior towards Jaliek at least, and being controlling in extreme ways, like the no plumbing, no electricity, no outside influences or experiences to reference. Yet, of course, it doesn't apply to him. So, yes, Jaliek did have reactive attachment disorder. He had a terrible childhood and was passed from foster home to foster home, and, due to his issues with connecting with parents because of his violent outbursts. He had all these issues, and Stephen Kerr and Jocelyn McDonald did not do anything to try and help him with therapy or medication. And instead, they just really wanted to get rid of him. This was evidenced by their call where Kerr said that they wanted to cancel their adoption, or whatever the hell he said. And were clearly, both of them, kind of at their wits' end with Jaliek after this few months of him living with them.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like it's like, oh, we'll call and see if we can give him back. Oh, you can't do that? Okay, well,
shit.
Let's send him to this house. Okay, they sent him back in a week.
Yeah.
Now what do we do? Yeah.
I will never understand why they didn't try to help him out with, therapy. I'm sure, as any parent of a child that has some behavioral issues, I'm sure does, look up ways, find resources to help you understand what he needs as a parent. Like, what can you do to make him not have these, outbursts and not threaten? What can you do to help this become less?
Well, I mean, ultimately, like you're saying, you've done nothing to help him try to resolve any of these issues. You feel like Stephen almost in
Jocelyn,
is that her name? Yeah. That they both just thought it would just go away. Like that his problems would just stop one day.
It's mind-boggling.
And it's like it's not the way that's not what he has. Yeah. So it does seem odd that, again, you need not even a form of medication, which is the quickest and easiest way for people to start trying to figure out what is going on with a person. Right. Yeah, I mean, therapy is, in my opinion, a little better, but most people go straight to the medication. Like, let's see if these balances are off.
Obviously, he responded well to his grandmother being loving, and seeming to take more care in handling different moods that he may have had while he was at her house. Like, he seemed to respond really well to her treatment of him. And whereas, like, Stephen, like we kind of talked about, Stephen is treating problems of Jaliek feeling or being reactive with him being reactive. It's like you're matching reactive behavior with more reactive behavior. And I'm shocked that didn't do anything to help. Like, real,
Yeah.
Oh, I really hate that guy.
Yeah. He's a piece of shit. I mean, that's all there is to it. Again, you can sum it up just by, this entire thing is that it seems like he's the one that has the most to give here, and he's not giving it, and I don't think we're ever gonna know.
I mean, like, the fact that Stephen took him to his father's unoccupied home for an evening when he was set up to go to yet another respite foster home, and then he magically vanished in the middle of the night, and somehow he didn't wake up to hear anything.
Yeah.
Yet his car was driving around, and then he didn't call the police for a while after he, showered and dropped off videotapes. There's all these facts that just don't add up or don't really. It's like, how fucking convenient is all this shit? Like, how convenient that all this stuff happened. And then you were found out to be just lying to the police like crazy.
Yeah. It just doesn't look good for him.
No, there's all this,
at all.
all this stuff. There's all the stuff he claimed he took with him that they found at his house. Somehow, this young boy with the most tragic upbringing imaginable was placed into an extremely abusive household where he was not only abused, but denied therapy for his past trauma and the side effects of it. And this utter piece of garbage of an adoptive father was able to essentially get rid of him without consequence. It is one of the most horrifying tragedy, I can't say the word, the most horrifyingly tragic situations I could ever imagine. To me, there was a running theme of paranoia of the outside world within the Kerr McDonald household, and that only continued after Kerr likely did something to Jaliek, where they blamed everyone else for what happened, and then perpetuated the theme of being the victims in the situation. They, Kerr, typical of an abuser, now turned the whole situation around to him being the victim here. They're trying to target me. They've been trying to pin this on me since the beginning. We've done nothing wrong. Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, God, he just has the most, like, if you look up that there's like this chart of abuse and it's like every single box this guy ticks. It's
I mean, it's very clear, and you're right. It's he obviously put his paranoia of the world or anyone controlling anything but him on his family.
For sure.
Yeah.
Poor Jaliek deserved a chance at a normal life, a happy life, but with the current system in place, it seems like that was never an option for him, which is horrible. But I, really can only hope that at least in his short 12 years, that the people who did seem to care and love him did show him the kind of life that was possible for him, and that he actually felt love from them. I think he surely did, at least from his grandmother, it seems. And I mean, that at least makes me feel a little bit better, because the family that adopted him clearly just couldn't give a shit about him.
Yeah.
Clearly. If he were still alive today, he would be 24 years old. So this is quite a long time ago. Hopefully one day something will happen where I always hope that the people who commit these kinds of crimes, supposedly, but I think we all know he really did it, but supposedly, if Stephen Kerr committed this crime, I always hope someone like him is gonna just speak to the wrong person, or with enough time that's passed, somebody that knows something can speak out. I always hope that will be the case. I don't know if it ever will happen. I
mean, you're right. It might not ever happen, but you kind of can't give up hope, because there's times when people decide to finally confess. Yeah. And it'll be unfortunate, because it kind of makes you hate the situation a little bit more, because it's like, dude, you could have resolved this years ago. But
I think that no matter what, if his grandmother's still alive, he still has foster parents that still love him. Somebody's got to break at some point. It's just like with the Tara Grinstead case, that was 12 years, and those guys that killed she was a teacher in Georgia, I think, but yeah, she, those stupid guys told people here and there that, were they didn't really believe him. And then finally someone that did kind of believe him came out and spoke to the police. It's like, this lady, if she ever breaks free of Steven, or if he dies even, something surely can come out. And that's why I wanted to cover it, is because, I feel like the biggest tragedy of all would be that it's just completely forgotten, and this guy just goes about a normal life like he's gotten away with it forever. But if somehow me talking about it can make 3,000 people hate this guy's guts, then I'm happy.
Well, I mean, you just never know you also never know who's listening, and there may be somebody who is from that area who might just happen to have a family story that was told or something. I mean, there's always that's the interesting thing about technology and where we are in 2019, is that even though this story is not that old, it has been so many years since it's happened, that it is technically considered an older case, and things can always change, and we see it every day.
That's definitely true. Yeah, somebody just got arrested the other day. Yeah, so, oh man, please, if you do know something, if you have any information about poor Jaliek Rainwalker's disappearance. Stephen Kerr.
Yeah. Needless to say, he didn't give a lot of information, and he's the last one to see it.
Yeah. Like, it's glaringly obvious that he has more. He at least knows more than he's telling. So,
yeah.
Okay. So that's gonna be the end of our coverage on Jaliek Rainwalker. I hope that you're still, in a somewhat stable emotional state at this point, because I'll tell you, I wanted to kill somebody named Stephen Kerr.
It's a very enraging case.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, it's a hard one. But thank you for listening, everybody.
But it's important to do.
It is. And it's like one of those where I've had this on my list for a while, and I was like, I don't think I'm in the emotional place to cover this at this point, but I think it was time. So, I'm glad everybody listened. Thanks for listening, everybody. Thank you, Holly, so much for coming and joining me on this with such short notice. You are a true queen of my life.
Oh, well, thanks for asking. I had a lot of fun. Well, as much fun as telling this story can be. I've had a lot of good time interacting with you, and just having, a different situation where I'm not the one telling all of the details.
I've liked it. We have, talked about you coming on the show anyway, but this isn't exactly what I was planning, because I want you to be able to have a little more input in what we talk about. So we'll also do that again. We'll do it again, but with more than 24 hours notice. I don't think you even got that. I think it was less than that. I think it was 12. So so you are the babeliest babe alive, and I do appreciate it.
Well, thanks for having me. Hopefully I did it. I did creep it real justice.
Oh, you definitely did. Everybody already loves you, and if they don't, then now they are going to love you. But that said, you have your own podcast that everybody can check out, and should, if you're not already, called Murd Up.
Yeah, it's Murd Up Podcast. I do it with my co-host Daniel. I just tell a murder story to him every week. He's not a true crimer, so it's kind of bringing him into the community a little bit and frustrating him and making him angry about the same type situations.
It's a great dynamic because, like you said, he doesn't come into the story knowing anything, and so Holly's telling him stories and he's reacting to the stuff that happens, which, as you can imagine and probably do yourself, we're all like, what the fuck? What the fuck?
He's a living GIF. That's what he is.
That's definitely true. And there's tons of good little references y'all drop throughout, and you also have another podcast that I don't have any clue about, but I'm sure it's a delight, and I'm sure there's plenty of Game of Thrones fans out there that listen that would be interested.
Yeah, it's called Throne Thugs. It's just a Game of Thrones rewatch podcast. We covered the entire series, and we're covering the final season. So yeah. If you're into Game of Thrones and you are caught up, definitely I would suggest checking that out. It's similar. We just shoot the shit. We talk about the show, and then I recap the episode. So
I'm sure, one day when I watch it, I'll be like, I'm gonna go back and listen to all those podcasts about it.
I've had some people tell me that they were like, "Oh, I never can remember this person's name, and you are always on top of it." So, I've had friends, text me and they'll be like, "Hey, can you explain the situation to me?" So the show is kind of like that, where if somebody has a question, I'll be like, "Oh, this is this person."
Oh,
so
yeah, that's probably okay. Because I'll be honest, I have watched maybe a couple episodes before, but long ago, and I just was like, what? I was just overwhelmed. Huh? So yeah, it probably would help.
It's a lot of information, and I'm a super nerd when it comes to at least with the books in the show. So that was kind of our starting point for that. So that's just again, it's a fun show. Yeah. We're just doing through the end of the season. So
I mean, everybody I know that loves Game of Thrones loves your show. So I'm sure you would too if you're out there listening.
Well, I appreciate it.
Yeah, I just can't speak for myself. I can't be that disingenuous. So that said, also we're gonna be, both of us and the Bumblebutts are going to be at the Chicago the Chicago True Crime Festival, July.
Yeah.
What was it?
Something 13th, 12th, something around that point. It's that Saturday.
Hold on, yeah.
It's the 13th.
Okay, I'm like 16th for sure. Okay, no. Yeah. So, okay, we, both of us, and the Bumblebutts are going to be at the Chicago True Crime Festival, July 13th in Chicago. You can look online under Chicago True Crime Festival and see who's all going to be. There's going to be like a butt ton of people there. There's tons of people going to be there. I mean, just out of our own little circle-y kind of thing. There's, I know Death by Champagne is going to be there. I don't remember who else though. There's a bunch of other people. So
yeah, it's definitely like, I feel like there's a podcast signing up like every day. So
oh yeah.
Yeah, there's definitely a good list of people and it seems like it's going to be a lot of fun. I think there's like, a whole like event to line up, like the panel and stuff. So they've got a whole lot of interesting like little things to do, and it'll just be fun to meet everyone.
Yeah, it's gonna be super fun. I'm excited. I think I'm gonna like bring, you know, some merchandise to it, I suppose, and so, you know, you can buy some stuff or meet people in person. I mean, I'm excited, I think, to meet a couple of people in person. I mean, obviously you, Holly, but obviously the Bumblebutts.
Obviously.
Obviously them too.
Yeah.
You know, but also there's other people there that are going to be there that I'm like, oh, I'm going to schmooze with some, you know, some podcasters.
Yeah, it seems like everyone's kind of treating it as a vacation too. So it seems like, we'll have a good bit of time to kind of like, you know, hang out and schmooze with everyone and stuff.
I'm excited. Yeah. I'm like, I'm pretty jazzed about it.
Yeah.
It'll be really fun. I think we'll be able to eat some good food. I'm kind of wanting to go to the museum because it's a pretty rad museum, but
definitely.
Yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff to do. I mean, I really, honestly, I loved it when I went. I just clapped. I always do that. Why do I do that? Why? In the microphone? I'm like, the best thing to do right now is clap. Tickets are still, I think, early bird right now. I don't know when they're not going to be, but yeah, go check it out if you want to hang with us. You can come to this, why do I keep saying Chicago True Crime Festival. Okay, so I got worked up talking about it. Okay, I'm going to let Holly go. She's been on the phone with me for 2 hours. But so if you want to email us for any reason, the email is creepitrealpod@gmail.com. There's creepitrealpod on Instagram, Twitter, you know, blah, 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 yada, yada, you know, all the stuff. If you want to be a real sweetie and go rate and review us, that would be great on iTunes or wherever you listen. Also, do the same for Murd Up Podcast. Go give us 5 stars at least. And if you want to, you know, go the extra mile and leave us a positive review, that would be even cooler.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Everybody have a good day. I'll talk to you later.
We'll see you soon. Bye.